there joining us. We started things about a minute early here, so we're going to let people kind of join in. And we are going to talk about our day in San Diego and Comic-Con tips and all sorts of fun stuff here as we get going in the next minute.
So the weather is pretty nice. It's been mostly overcast, so when I set it up, I wasn't too concerned about the sun, but now the sun's come out, so hopefully Sean doesn't get too sunburned. But thank you, Phoenix Richardson, for tuning in, and Jen.
Alejandro, yep.
Yeah, thank you all for being here.
Thank you. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and get started here. Talk about the day. So we're going to keep kind of a similar format to last year. If you listened in or watched any of our YouTube lives last year, we have kind of working two different ways. So we've got the YouTube lives, which we'll be doing weekly from here on out, and actually it'll be more than weekly as we get closer to the convention, so you can count on that. And then also, though, for people that are more audio only or not YouTube people, they can find the feed later on our podcast channel there as well. So you can look up Parks and Cons there. Hello, House to Van. Hello. Saw a couple more jump in the chat there. Hello to you all there. Comic-Con's a month away. Yes, it is. Excited for that. So, Chad, hello, Chad. Good to see you in there. All right, so what we've seen today. So obviously in the earlier parts of these shows, like looking back even at last year, there's just not as much as if you're watching with us on YouTube, you're going to see behind us the San Diego Convention Center and the grass, but obviously there's no FX build right now. We're sitting right where, FX was last year and is most years, and we'll see if they're there this year, but we're not quite to that point. This time of year is us kind of grabbing video, going around, and then some wraps appearing and things of that nature. So starting out like last year, our first segment here will just be our day in San Diego and kind of the things we saw. It gets a lot longer of a list as we get closer to the convention, but right now it's a Padres game today. Not seeing any banners out yet, although this was the week that the banners showed up last year, so they probably will be showing up like right after we leave San Diego, and they'll show up tomorrow, but they're not here as of today. We did see, or I should say I saw, the Solar Opposites wrap on the trolley, which was nice to see in person. We've been stalking that all day and just not seeing that, or the Paramount Plus ones or anything.
We were out there several times, and it was just the trolleys that were wrapped just weren't going by. It's like I got excited, and it's like, oh wait, no, it's the Apollo one still from last year. Oh wait, oh no, never mind. Oh no, okay, so yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it, but I was finishing my Sweet Things tropical twist while Sean was over there trying to capture that, because we were already kind of in this general area where we wanted to record. So fortunately Sean was able to see it in person. Alas, I was not, but I'm sure I'll see it on our video.
And we'll see. I mean, the Padres games tonight, there's going to be more trains coming, so we'll see. Maybe we'll see that there, and we'll get to when we talk about the news. There are the Paramount Plus ones as well, which we've not seen in person. So the only real sign of Comic-Con was that, and then if you want to count it, some plants that are comic wrapped over at the Ralph's, which is just kind of a cute little aside there. We did stop by Now or Never Comics, which had the Harley Quinn tie-in last year for the HBO Max series. They still have up there artwork and all of that from that, which looks great. We love stopping by there because it's a fun Comic-Con fix. We also stopped by Sweet Things San Diego, which is right here at the Bayfront, right next to us there, and tried, as you said, the tropical twist with the pineapple Dole Whip.
Yes, I substitute the yogurt with the pineapple Dole Whip, and it's very good. The yogurt would just make it too healthy, but the Dole Whip, it's very tasty and fruity and stuff. And Sean, who's not big on actual sweetness and sweet things, he doesn't have much of a sweet tooth, actually likes that drink. So
yeah, it's really, really good. Yeah, all their stuff's great, and they have some neat things coming along here. If you follow along with them on Instagram, they said they're going to be posting things about their windows and the artwork that they're going to be doing this year, as well as some new menu items. They kind of teased a few things that are coming new for San Diego Comic-Con as well, which is exciting, and obviously we'll follow along with that as we get closer to. Okay, so although we didn't see a ton of things visually, no big wraps on the Omni or things like that, there has been a lot of news since obviously we've been doing these. I mean, the last live stream we did for our Patreon group in April, and we talked about like the next 100 days. This is the first one we're doing for everyone. And so obviously a lot of things have happened in that amount of time, but each week what we'll try to do is hit on a couple things that really kind of grab us on the, I guess for me a lot of times it's like the ground level of a lot of the types of stuff that we do and things that grab of interest there. And so I think one of the things that really stood out to me and seems like a big deal is last week on the San Diego Comic-Con's unofficial blog podcast, the SD Concast, is NVE Experiences, who's done Dungeons and Dragons and has done the Orville and the Tick. Them talking about having 4 offsites this year to me is a huge deal. Like in a year, and I know there's a lot of like concern of like what will the year be like with the writer strike, how much can that impact the actors, etc. There's a lot of question marks. So hearing a company that's done like some of our favorite offsite work say that there's 4 things they're working on actively right now and that they're excited about them, to me that was huge news. So I know that didn't like garner its own headline, from everywhere in Comic-Con, but to me that was like a really big thing. Like when I was listening to the podcast myself and heard them say that, and I like sat up and I was like, okay, this is awesome. This is amazing news. So I think that's a big thing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know. I was just going to say that it's just good to hear different things that are coming, because obviously there are lots of questions out there with the writer strike and all these other things, but Comic-Con is happening one way or another, and we're going to be here and we're going to enjoy whatever we can and whatever there is to enjoy. And so hearing news of anything coming is awesome, and so every little grasp of anything we are super excited for. And so yeah, that all sounds very promising and very exciting, because the offsites NB has done in the past the ones we've experienced have been fun and enjoyable. So definitely looking forward to seeing what they are going to be presenting this year.
Yeah, and it's such a tough spot. Again, it's like we've had the pandemic, and then it's like, okay, this is going to be the year full steam ahead, and obviously the economy has been what it's been, inflation has been what it's been, and then now with these strikes, it's just like things keep kind of swirling. And so it doesn't feel like this will be a quote unquote normal San Diego Comic-Con. It feels like it's going to be impacted in a lot of different ways again. And so hopefully at some point we get back to a good roll of knowing what to expect, and a lot of these same things repeating themselves. It's funny because I feel like in 2019, something you would hear, like when we would know somebody that would drop out from San Diego Comic-Con, they might say things like, well, it's just kind of the same thing every year. And now it's like, I know a lot of people are like, well, I wish we could get back to the same thing every year, because there's been so much kind of ups and downs. And I know myself, it's never been the same thing every year. There's always been a lot of variety to me, but it is kind of interesting that there is that going on there. So
in regards to questions, are we going to answer them, like save them to the end?
Why don't we get them as we move from segment to segment? Okay. So with that, let's just do a couple more quick things on the news segment, and then we'll get to those. But yeah, feel free to drop in those questions if you have them there into the chat. The other thing to me that was a big deal is the Dragon Ball offsite coming back. That's been a big deal. The back of the Marriott over there, and that's returning, and that's a big time offsite. And so I was really excited to hear that. I thought that was a big thing to me.
Yeah, and that feels like it kind of grows every year. And last year felt much bigger than it had been in previous years. And basically, if I recall correctly, there was like 2 really big like statues, and there were games to like try out, and I think there were some giveaways and different things on display. So I love that last year seemed bigger than it had been in the past, and that they've committed, or that they're planning to come back this year, I think is a really cool thing. So
yeah, for those that are listening in or watching that are not anime people, the anime world has been like just nonstop booming through the pandemic and everything else. Like we've seen at so many conventions, various anime properties, companies, etc., take the spots of other traditional booths. I know New York Comic-Con has seen that a lot as well, and every convention we've gone to that's at all anime affiliated is just like busting at the seams, even if it's like supposed to be like the tiniest thing around. So it makes sense that Dragon Ball's back and that it's going to have a big presence, and it's not, I don't think, a surprise. But again, when we talk about the news on this one, I mean, it's always things that kind of, I think, more impact us and a lot of people that follow along with us, which is a lot of the offsite stuff and the zooming around. The gas lamp right now is kind of our big thing. That said, obviously the SDCC unofficial blog has so much news there, and so there's so many things every day, let alone in a week as we gather them. Did want to mention also that 30 Brew Arcade, again mentioning the blog, they have an article up on it. We stopped by there last week to get some photos of it. It looks like a fun little addition over there. The Manchester's always seemed a little stuffy to me, just in general, like relative to like the vibe of over here at the Bayfront. And maybe it's not. We don't spend a ton of time down that way during outside of fun days,
Yeah,
really.
fun days is the only thing usually.
But it was neat to see. Just it's like this neat social area. They have a change machine like old retro arcades. You get your quarters, you pay 50 cents, and you play Donkey Kong or whatever. You pay $2 and play the pinball and stuff like that. So just kind of a fun hangout thing for locals that you could even do now. It's not San Diego Comic-Con specific.
Yeah, and basically it's like kind of that bar, kind of lounge area that if you were going to fun days and you went up the escalators, if you turned around, there's like a bar/restaurant over there, and it's basically in that area. So it's very similar setup, but with games added along the walls and stuff. So it's not like super massive or anything like that, but it is cool that that there are those games and that there are some extra activities that you can do over there, and they're welcoming to that. And their menu, they have the items named for different games and stuff. I don't remember any of them offhand, but it was kind of an extra neat addition that they've added to that area that is there all the time. And I think their hours, they go until like midnight or something like that, like every day, or maybe later. I don't remember exactly, but they had longer hours than I was expecting them to.
Yeah, and it's the type of thing that right now it's like super exciting because it's like, hey, it's leading into Comic-Con and it has that fun, gaming vibe and all of that. And then as we get weeks and weeks closer and there's offsites being built, I don't want to say we forget about it, but it's just like at that point then it becomes like, hey, wait, there's this new offsite going into this spot. What is it? And it just the game changes as we go along covering all this stuff. But right now it's a really big kind of thing on our radar. So again, the new stuff is just things that kind of catch our attention there. And the last one, which we already mentioned a little bit, was just seeing the Solar Opposites wrap, MTS. So they've got the Paramount Plus, they've got the Lower Decks one, and as we know, by the time Comic-Con comes, we can expect to see a ton of wraps. Like right now, it's a disproportionately large number of just red cars with no wraps of any sort of pop
I'm
culture.
hoping they're just prepping them, like they're getting them nice and clean and stuff, so they can slap them with lots of wraps as the time comes. But yeah, right now it's mostly just plain trolleys.
Yeah, but seeing the Solar Opposites one, I said like it looked really good. Like it was one of those ones that takes over the entire car, and it's just every piece of it is artwork from the show. And I know that's a show you and I both enjoyed quite a bit, so that's always particularly neat for I think any fan of Comic-Con. Like when you see a property represented that you're actually into, it just is that much sweeter than when it's something that you may not be into or may not know anything about there. May come down the line. So, okay, maybe let's see if there were any questions in the chat there, and then we'll move to a little bit of a preview of things coming up.
By the way, thank you for all the thumbs ups already.
Yes, thank
everybody.
you very, very much for those.
Let's see, so
A month away. Okay.
Yeah, hellos to everybody. Carrie, I agree, the dogs running in the background are very fun. Let's see, is there a way to still get tickets?
Well, the next person right there in the chat answered that as well. The eBay auctions are the only way for tickets right now, so you can follow along over on eBay, and the blog's also tweeted out some things. I know others have also looked into kind of like the ebb and flow normally of the prices on those. It's usually not something you want to necessarily jump in on right this minute because it's kind of highest at those points. But yeah, eBay would be the place to look, and obviously only buy from Comic-Con International and not from somebody that may be having fakes or scalping them.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to be taken advantage of. And then let's see, BME Mike, agree, not ideal Mondo situation related to Funko. Let's see, RMD Collective, do you know where the pickup drop off for the shuttles at the for the convention center?
So last year we did a video on exactly that to like really clarify, because full disclosure, Carmel and I never use the shuttles because we're always staying further out and then driving in because we drive down from Riverside. So last year it was like actually like, okay, let me do some homework, and we did some homework to figure out the shuttles.
Well, plus they had changed from previous years, so
and I don't think that's been announced yet. I may have missed that because it's not, but that's on the list of things to look at, and then probably do a video again this year if that's going to be of help.
But last year, if I recall correctly, the majority were basically where Petco is, where I'm pointing. Yeah, kind of past the Bayfront, like going over the bridge. There's kind of a street that kind of U-turns. Yeah. By the parking lot and Petco, and a lot of the drop-offs were like on that street, and then I believe others were at the Manchester.
Yeah.
The Manchester, I think in their driveway were the bulk of the other ones. But as that comes out, I'm sure we'll do updates on
and
that.
there is a video on our, if you want to look at our playlist from last year, there's a video that's specifically just about all of the drop-offs. I didn't really retain that very well in my memory banks there, but it was there. Carrie, regarding the rooftops, the Rooftop Cinema Club announced their films today. Nothing on Friday night screening again seems likely. I did see that, and I didn't really retain that information either, so thank you for dropping that in there. I know it's like there's so much information coming out right now, which is exciting. I know Carrie and I actually talked about it because it's like, oh, it's 150 days away, it's 100 days away, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's 30 days away, or like today when we were going to Now or Never, because Aaron there, he always asks us like how many days it is, because I'll always like give him a hard time. I'll be like 200 days to Comic-Con, and I was like, okay, so how many days is it? And we're like 35, and it was like, oh my gosh, it really is 35. So yeah, hoping for good omens on that Friday. Yes, totally agree with that. We liked, Carrie is the biggest Good Omens fan, but we did like Good Omens quite a bit. But yeah, and that's the kind of sleuthing, actually, if you're in the chat, that's so fun with the blog. And just, I think for Comic-Con fans in general, what's a lot of fun is putting pieces together and saying, well, what happened? Okay, so last year for the Rooftop Cinema, Friday was open. What happened there? Oh, Amazon took it over and they put in Paper Girls. Okay, this year the schedule came out, but Friday's open. Might Amazon do it again? Does Amazon have a big thing coming out like right with Comic-Con? Seems like a really cool fit. And I don't know, sometimes the sleuthing is more fun than the actual things. I won't say that for this one necessarily, but just in general in Comic-Con life. I know my favorite thing is seeing the truck pull up with like pieces of statues or things like that, and trying to figure out like, what is this going to be? You know, how do these pieces go together for this offset?
Yeah, and if you've not followed along with us, those, especially the Monday and Tuesday before Comic-Con, Sean is just like looping the gas lamp. Like he gets thousands and thousands and thousands of steps in each day because he's just looping to see what he can find and try to guess at what things are going to be and stuff. And so he enjoys it. I'll be around for parts of it, but I certainly don't do nearly the entire stuff that Sean does. He loves that stuff. So, and it is lots of fun, but not in that capacity or not in that amount. Let's see. BME Mike, we're in that it's both too many and too few days away spot right now.
Call, Mike.
Definitely. It feels like there's way too much to accomplish before then, but also it's like, I don't know, it's very exciting.
100% true. Daniel Vargas, do you think D23 Hellfire Gala will be a good party to go to? So we've only been to a couple of D23 parties anywhere. We've been to, for Star Wars Celebration last year, we went to the D23 Star Wars party, and it was fine. Like there was a couple cosplayers that were kind of designated there, like Figure and Dan was there, and then they had an R2 droid there, but it was mostly like a DJ and dancing
and
photo ops, and then in a bar you could buy drinks at and stuff. And so for us, not being drinkers and not being much in the party scene in general, like parties aren't always the best fit for us just in general. So it's not something that we rush out to buy tickets for, but at the same time, like that party, talking about the Star Wars one, it was filled with exuberant Star Wars fans that were like so excited to be there with each other and celebrating the day and drinking, to be honest. So I would imagine the Hellfire Gala will have a ton of amazing cosplayers that are going to celebrate that X-Men spirit. And at Comic-Con, we know the cosplayers bring it, so I would imagine there's going to be some incredible stuff there. But I don't know like that I would be expecting like any celebrities to stop by. Personally, I wouldn't be. I would be thinking of it as more of like a dance party with some amazing cosplayers. Just a guess.
Yeah, and who knows? And D23 has been going through their own changes, so it could be a completely different experience than we've had in the past because there have been so many changes there. So we don't know, but also I know past years I didn't pay attention to where the location is this year, but it's usually a decent distance away from the convention center. I think last year it was near a trolley line, but it was still a decent distance away. So just something to consider if you are cosplaying and it's going to be complicated and a long walk would be an issue. But I think it's potentially going to be a lot of fun, but that's going to be like from the mingling with other people and stuff, not necessarily like celebrities and big stuff like that.
All right, let's come back to our like segments here, and then we can come back to the questions there in the chat, though. So our next part, just want to preview real quick some things that we do have coming up. The thing we're working on a lot today is a new video, one that we've not done before, that's all about quick eats in the San Diego Comic-Con campus area. So what we're trying to do is go around and find places that we've enjoyed, or if we've not enjoyed, they've been like highly recommended. So there's obviously a lot of places, like I feel bad, some of these places we're going by, and it's like they may be the best little ice cream shop ever, they may be the best sandwich shop ever, but just if we haven't heard anything about it, we're not putting it on the video. But we are going around and even capturing in that things like Ralph's or 7-Eleven. We know those are big stops for some people, but just basically where are the places that we find you can get the quickest and cheapest food during the convention, because that's been kind of the most requested
or if it's
video.
not cheap, we disclose it, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's the convenience outweighs the price. So.
Yeah, I think that's been the most requested video we've had over the last few years, so we're putting that together, and you can find that over at the SDCCblog.com when we get that done, and on our YouTube channel. So we're working on that now. We have a list of other videos coming up in the new, actually on that note, next week will be when we start doing the live kind of campus tour section. So like last year, and we'll repeat some of these, like, so for example, Seaport Village next week is probably where we're going to start, and we'll go to Seaport Village. So next week when we come back out here, which is likely going to be Wednesday, and we'll post that on social as well, we'll do this show in the evening or late afternoon, and then we'll also do earlier in the day like a tour of a section of the campus. So like I said, we'll probably start with Seaport Village because it's an easy kind of spot to go, and it's had a lot of changes again since last year. We were just over there last week kind of looking around, and some things I'm surprised are still closed, some things I'm surprised have opened, others have closed and I thought they'd stay open, and so I think it'll be a good one just to kind of go and do a tour. And so if you're able to, again, we'll post it on social, the links and all of those things, but you can follow along with us, and if you can't watch it in real time, you can always watch it later to see what's going on in Seaport Village. So those are things kind of on the upcoming for us. Also for our Parks and Cons crew, those that support on Patreon, we are going to be bringing back the bonus hops, which means exclusive content each week related to San Diego Comic-Con, and then the Halloween season, and then later on for theme park stuff, also giveaways just specific to our Patreon people. We thank you so much for your support. We'll be posting more about what that all is going to look like. We did tell those that joined us in the live stream back in April that we are going to do something different this year for one of those things, which is going to be on preview night. If you're in town, we're going to do like a personalized tour that morning of like off-sites. Like probably it'll be like 9 or 10 in the morning, and we're going to go around and here's where this is and here's where that is, and everybody in that group is going to get a swag bag. That said, make sure to follow along on Mighty Networks where we do our Patreon updates, because we do need to know who's going and sign up early. So we'll be posting that later, but just we need to have like a cutoff window because we need to put things together.
Yeah, so if you are a patron supporter, part of the Parks and Cons crew, and are going to be around preview morning, basically, not preview night, in the morning, then yeah, let us, we'll
have a thread.
Well, yeah, we'll post about it and all the specifics and stuff, but put it on your calendar so you can join us, and we'll just walk around and kind of do a tour and stuff, and we'll see what other specifics, but that's kind of the general gist. Just put it on your calendar so if you are going to be out here.
And also, we've started our giveaways. In fact, we're going to announce our swag bag giveaway winner from this last week. That's just generally on Twitter. There, we've got that winner, and we'll announce in a second. But also, we are going to have our prize drops throughout that Comic-Con week as well. So we'll be doing those. So you can follow along with us and Twitter, and we'll have those there. We kind of stopped doing them on, to be honest, like Instagram and Facebook. Those algorithms and those formats just didn't seem friendly to it. Like we would do a drop, and it would just like sit there for like 15 minutes, whereas like Twitter, we do a drop and it's gone in like 15 seconds, it feels like. So we'll probably just do Twitter again. If there's some of you watching that are like really into Instagram and you don't have Twitter and things like that, then let us know, and we will go ahead and follow along with that and make sure that we're all in good shape there with all of those things. So so our swag bag winner, so we did have our Twitter retweet contest. We do that every year. We do multiples. We'll have more swag bags going up. So just to announce the winner of that, the winner is Michelle Kohler, K-O-L-L-E-R. So Michelle, if you're listening in, you are the winner. Otherwise, we'll post it like normal on Twitter once we get off this live stream and stuff. But if you're tuning in, that's the winner of that one, and we'll have a new one going up pretty soon, and everybody is eligible for that one. So do you want to check questions before we go to our SDCC tips in our next segment there?
Let's see. So there was discussion about, I think, an earlier topic, but I think you all were discussing that, which is great. Chad mentioned that he's very hard to keep up with, which he is, and why I don't always. And Cars1223 asked how many steps you're at, Sean.
It's only it's under 13,000.
So it's under 13,000.
Not not quite in the shape we need to be ready for Comic-Con, so but getting there.
There aren't builds yet. There isn't like quite the incentive to like totally circle many times, but we'll get there. I'm sure it's coming.
Twitter's the best option. Yeah.
When should sign
is the best of the bad. I like that. I like that a lot from Mike. Twitter is the best of the bad options. I think that's honestly how I feel about all of social media in general. So I think that's maybe like a potential like tattoo to get or something. So that like really sticks with me. Okay, let's go ahead and jump back to our tips then, and we'll come back to the chat there for any last questions there. So the SDCC tips, if you do follow along with Twitter, that is where we put tips. We try to do as many as possible daily there, and so you can always find them there. We use the hashtag SDCC tips there, and then what we did with the live stream last year is kind of come back to it and try to talk about it just to kind of, I don't know, break it down a little more. People have questions about
clarify.
it. Yeah. So the two categories that the ones from this week fall into is there, and a lot of times in cases, there's the now, like these are things we suggest doing now to get ready, and then the other category is going to be the floor. So on the now, one of the things a lot of people seem to engage with this week was the idea of just making sure that you know your group of who you're going to be with and how the pace everybody can do and how much sleep they need and all those things. And so our friend Todd over at Toddland really said it well and kind of responding to it is like communication so key of just knowing. And I know you and I talk about this like with Disneyland. It's like we go with these friends to Disneyland and they do it this way, and then we go with these people and they do it that way. We went with our niece and nephew to Knott's on Monday and they do it a very different way. Being little kids, like all they want to do is rides, and it was just like all day long was rides and coasters and like nothing but that. They had no interest in a show, not even for 30 seconds. It was like get to the next ride. Food had to be cut short because gotta get to the next ride. So point being with San Diego Comic-Con, some people approach it that way as well. It's like how late people want to stay up, how much they can go, and it's tough because like we've been doing it together so long, so we know, like, I need a lot of breaks because of my feet issues and things like that, and so we time, like we do that. Like as an example, our mornings of Comic-Con, a lot of times it's like hit the floor and we do our run around, and usually those that have followed along for a while know Carmel's the one that like gets in line if there's a line to get in, because she's great at like, okay, this is my thing and I'm going to focus on this thing, and I don't have like
Plus, I have the feet. I can withstand standing for long periods of time, and Sean with his feet issues, that's just very difficult.
Yeah, and I love bouncing around and like, what's free here, and is there a signing over here?
And I would rather
and
avoid those crowds and rather avoid like pushing and shoving, trying to get free stuff. I'll get in a nice orderly line. I'll wait my turn. That's what I prefer. But Sean loves the running around and bouncing around. But go ahead.
No, good.
I was just going to say, so in regards to the tip, I mean, if you've come before, then hopefully you kind of know what your pacing is and communicate it with your group and be sure that everybody at least has an understanding, because it's difficult when, one person's wanting to run and another person needs a break. But communication obviously is key to all that.
Well, that's what I say is like we do that in the morning, but we both know that at about 10 to 11, somewhere in there, we're probably heading to the mezzanine and taking a break then. So like we have this like really hardcore, well, we get there early, get in line, we wait the line out, we go down the escalator, and then we have this really hardcore like hour to 2 hours of like bopping around. And then it's like we both know, like we'll text and like, okay, let's go take a break. And maybe it's the mezzanine, maybe it's over at the Omni, maybe it's at a grab and go at the Bayfront, but we know like, okay, we're gonna probably take a break at that point. And so point being is just having that. And if you're newer to the convention or you're bringing new people, it's tough to kind of illustrate to them how busy it can be, but the more you can get on the same page of goals, we're going to go our separate way, and hopefully you have a group, because I think that's like really nice if you have a group that you're like, we're just going to go do our own thing and we're all okay with that. Because I know somebody
just meet up for dinner, or
several responded about like going solo, and it's like I think a lot of times going on your own can be some of the most fun stuff too. Is like just like I'm gonna go and do, like I said, we kind of split up for that hour and do our own thing, and then we come back together. So that's the first one. On the next thing in terms of like prepping the now, we talked about, we posted this one today, was about the poster tubes. And this is something you noticed that I feel like for, I don't know, a long time really didn't realize how much damage the free poster tubes that we were getting at conventions, particularly San Diego, were doing. Because like Fox is handing out poster tubes, go get them. Viz is handing out poster tubes, go, and I'd get them and I'd throw posters in them, and then you were the one noticing, like, you realize a lot of them are getting damaged over time just because they are, I mean, obviously they're free, they're cheaper, so then we like invested in some nicer poster tubes, and then we developed our system where it's like we have one that we keep with us at the show, and then we have another one that we keep in the car or the room to kind of organize them. But having something there, I mean, you may not be a poster person, you may not care. I like getting the poster tubes because even if I like getting anything, because even if we don't keep it, we'll use it for giveaways or something. So it all has value for us. But those types of, having a plan with that coming in is something I didn't think about for a long time going to Comic-Con, really till you pointed it out.
Well, yeah, and also I think even the better poster tubes, you have to be careful because if you are holding them straight up and down for long periods of times, they do tend to shift. And then as you add stuff, the ones that they kind of start to get, wrinkled and stuff at the bottom. So I do try to, as much as possible, keep them more horizontal than vertical, especially in the car and stuff. But obviously that makes more sense. But just because, they do kind of shift towards the bottom and then they start to get damaged and stuff. So the higher quality ones, it's not going to be as much of an issue as some of the free ones can be. Yeah. Plus the way they close in, like those box ones, the lids basically just like go on the inside, and so you're shoving stuff in on the inside, whereas the nicer ones, they kind of wrap on the outside, so it's not shoving stuff in on the inside.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other tips we had from this week were specific to floor time, which is something, that's kind of something we do the most, so it makes sense that a lot of our tips sometimes come back to things on the floor and in the moment. So the first one here is just keeping track of the rows. If you're not a person that does all of the rows, it doesn't even matter probably to you, but for us, it's really important to do every row of every convention we go to, so including the monstrous San Diego Convention Center. And so we keep track. So we may do rows, 400 to 600, and we keep track in my phone or things like that. The one thing to note on that, though, is there are pressure points on the convention center floor at every convention. Is when the doors open, everybody floods a certain spot, and obviously it's San Diego, a lot of people are going to always gush to the middle where you're going to have your Lego and your Lucasfilm and those types of booths. Those are probably always going to be very dense, but the far ends a lot of times are not as packed at various points of the day. So those are things we kind of look for. We're not going to probably start out on the far end, because that's where a lot of people that are not as familiar with the convention are going to go first, because they're I'm going to start on the left and work my way right, or a lot of the long time people are starting in the middle at those spots. And admittedly, we end up at those spots as well too, quite a bit, because that's where a lot of the freebies are and things like that, or the experiences. But keeping track of it in your phone can be helpful, and just remove the stress of hey, maybe I'm just going to pop in and do these 2 rows, and now I know I did those 2 rows. And again, if you don't do all the rows, it's kind of a moot point. It doesn't really matter. But I know for us, and I know a lot of people, that's kind of important to them, of wanting to see every vendor in small press and artist alley in the gaming area. And so as hard as it was last year on my feet with no carpet there, that was something we had to really allocate time every day, because I knew I wasn't going to be we had gotten out of the habit. So back in 2019, 2018, we started having a lot of rows left on Sunday, and Sunday was brutal. And with no carpet, it was okay, we can't do that. We have to break it up some. So the phone can be really helpful for that, amongst obviously a lot of other things.
Agreed.
And then, the shopping. Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of people had replied to that, is just Comic-Con is famous for a lot of people shopping on preview night and Sunday. And that's kind of a common convention thing in a lot of ways. Let's get the sales on Sundays when vendors might have discounts. And it's also I'm here and I need it, and it might be sold out. So knowing that is important, because then you might want to gauge that. Now, in the end, you may have a panel schedule or offsite schedule. It doesn't matter. But it's just important to know that Wednesday night, everybody's shopping. That's what everybody's doing there.
Well, Wednesday night there aren't panels or anything to pull people away. So if anyone's has a preview night and anyone's there, you're going to be on the floor, because there's very little to do off the floor.
Yeah. And Sunday, likewise. The Sunday shuffle was in full effect last year. Those rows were really packed in a lot of areas and stuff. So, again, San Diego, it feels like this tip maybe matters a little less in San Diego, because a lot of times it's it doesn't matter because my schedule, I've got this panel on this day, so I'm going to do this anyway. But it's funny, even throwing out that tip there was so many people that replied in different places that were well, yeah, I do all my shopping on Wednesday, or I do all my shopping on Wednesday. It's yep, that's exactly, I believe that's what we see oftentimes.
So it's important just to note that, it is something to account for, and the floor is oftentimes busier on Wednesdays and Sundays than a lot of people realize. And again, Wednesday it makes sense. Sunday it's because people are like, oh wait, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, I need to go grab it, and or they just didn't want to carry it around the whole weekend, or there's lots of reasons for it. But the floor does get crowded on Wednesdays and Sundays, definitely.
Yeah. And obviously, elephant in the room is that if the panels are not as strong, if these strikes impact it, even if just the threat of strike impacts it, and certain studios don't come or don't plan, like, yeah, the floor will be more crowded all throughout. Like, it just is what it is like, that was, I think, one of the first Comic-Con lessons I feel like we ever learned, like way back, in 2005 or whenever it was. It's like, wow, when the big rooms aren't busy, the floor is really busy. It is important. And to that end, it's important for FX and companies like that to be here pulling people outside. Not that there aren't people in the gas lamp that are not Comic-Con attendees or don't have a badge that day, but just the more things you have, the more places it brings people. And it's one of the things whenever we talk about like reservation systems, and this kind of goes back a little bit, like when we look at the lottery system, and I'm never a fan of any lottery system. It's just me when it comes to convention stuff. I just feel like let people sleep and fight it out or whatever. But that said, when you're not waiting for something, you have time to do other things, and now it makes other things crowded. So the time you weren't spending, like Hasbro not selling at the con in any real way took thousands of people out of line in that morning and put them all rushing towards, I don't know, NECA, Super 7, Ballroom 20, whatever it might be, the offsites. It kind of reallocates. The bodies have to go somewhere, and we kind of know it's not people just sleeping in and saying, well, Hasbro's not here, I'm just going to sleep in and miss part of the con. Like, they're going to do other things there. So the last one, then we'll go back to our questions there, is about being very specific on the floor, and we'll have some other tips about being specific outside of the convention center, but as general, just being specific when you're trying to meet up with people, because it is very common that somebody will say, like, okay, where are you at? I'm trying to find you. Oh, I'm on row 3200 or whatever. And it's like, as you know, if you've been to this convention, that's a really tough thing to figure out. And so having a specific spot and saying, I am standing in front of Optimus Prime at the Hasbro booth on whatever 1600, it makes it so much more to a fine point. Something we do a lot is like Carmel, because my feet are so bad, I can't standing is much harder on me physically than walking. So Carmel will text me and say, where will you be in 5 minutes? And I'll be like, I'll be in front of the Hulkbuster Lego statue, I'll be in front of Todd McFarlane over at the, or whatever it might be. And that's kind of one way we also kind of try to communicate, but just having specificity, because what happens a lot of times, obviously, again, if you've been to the con, is wasted time is exactly that, wasted time. And I think our biggest currency at this convention, that we take time. People that are listening to this in June, well, a month before, that are like thinking about it, you really love this show and you really want to have time at the show. And so it sucks when you lose time. It really sucks to lose time trying to find people and not being able to, do those types of things and stuff like that. So that was the last of the tips for this week. We will have more all the way up until we get right to the convention. And they get more specific as we get right to the convention, because now it's like, hey, we're on the floor and here's a place to go. We might stop using the hashtag tips, but we'll just be kind of tweeting those things of like, hey, they're giving free whatever over here at this booth, whatever it might be.
Yeah, so big takeaway from this week's tips is communicate as clearly as possible. Work on those communication skills. I'm a terrible communicator. It drives Sean crazy, but I try, and especially in those environments, I really make an effort to be very clear, very specific. Sending photos as part of the where I'm at or where whatever can be helpful, but also can be challenging, because but they help. So communicate, all helpful things for many reasons at Comic-Con. So scrolling back, let me see. My break area, it's a Bree or Bry. My break area is usually the Pro Lounge. You're lucky you have access to the Pro Lounge. Most
great.
Of us don't. Let's see. You want
the biggest diameter tube you can manage. Yeah, that's a great tip there from Mike. Yep.
Yeah, and
preview night's really day one from Bry. Yep. I mean, totally. I mean, to me, preview night is kind of my favorite and most important day of the whole con. It used to be, especially when like there was so many exclusive physically. Now that so many have moved to like online stuff, it's been a little less vital. But yeah, I would be like very jittery if I like was not on the floor on preview night, because it's, to me, it is definitely day one. I agree with you.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. People have to go somewhere. HBO. Okay, so
Right,
right.
none of the restaurants done. Optimus Lime, I'm looking at you, Rockin' Bahala. That's a great call. That's a great call. Yeah.
Let's see. And Carrie
There's,
said that HBO confirmed to me timing is 100% due to timing, and Max is in. So
they do with the strike. Yeah.
yeah.
And that's such a great point that Carrie brings up there. Just about all this stuff is like, it's the same with exclusives too. It's just sometimes they'll be like, why is this thing not coming, or why is this company not coming? It's like, well, they don't want to promote something. Now we know for the floor there was a long time of like, hey, if you leave the floor, you're not going to get back on the floor. But obviously the world's a very different place for all of us since the pandemic, and so there's things where booths are like, hey, we're struggling. I mean, as we all have seen, if we follow entertainment news at all, like all these companies are really having a tough time figuring out streaming. Like they're really having a tough time figuring out how to monetize it, how to work with the shareholders. And what we all have seen from Comic-Con is in the last few years, as if a studio kind of stepped back some on the film side maybe, but we had a boom on the streaming side. But now if they're struggling on the streaming side, and so I think one thing we've seen over the years of Comic-Con is never count anything out. And I never thought we'd see Apple. I mean, like if you would have asked me a couple years ago, and then after last year, I mean, maybe Apple won't be back, or maybe they'll be back bigger than ever. So it's just interesting how those things can change. And I think particularly in the world of economy we have right now.
And Carrie added that House of the Dragon and The Last of Us are just really far away from airing. HBO skipped over years with similar timing. See 2018. They're skipping due to timing.
Yep.
And then Brian was worried because this was supposed to be DC Studios' year. It was supposed to be their debutante ball.
Yeah. And hopefully it still is. We'll see. Obviously, that's different than the HBO specific side. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. I mean, the things, obviously huge news that the blog has had over there has been Vincent D'Onofrio saying he'll be at Comic-Con, and, Echo having representation at Comic-Con, and we haven't seen Disney Plus Marvel shows really have that. And so immediately I start to think like, will Marvel have a Disney Plus like Marvel show hour, and then they'll have a studios hour, and it's like, who knows? And they could, and all of a sudden if they do this year and then they don't next year, people will be like, why don't they have it now? Well, they always have it. It's like, oh, they only had it 1 year. So these things change. And like I said, I'd say for longtime Comic-Con fans, I think we know like these are just rocky waters right now. And as humans, we all know like these are just rocky waters right now. So we'll see how it impacts.
Well, and obviously the more interest you manage to have, the better it is, because then there's lots of different things you can do. I mean, there's so much on the floor or off sites. We have just a lot of interest, and so regardless of what shows up, we're going to find something. And even when we go to shows that we're not even particularly familiar with the genre, we learn there. We take time to go to a panel that we can see something different and stuff. So there's obviously going to be stuff to do.
There's going to be a lot of stuff to do,
and we will still be busy regardless of what shows up or what doesn't. But yeah, I mean, if you're coming for one specific thing, then you may be disappointed, but then take the time to try something different.
Well, and that's the thing, is there's things like losing Hasbro at the show in the way that it has really like impacted me like it's made me like really, but what it's done for me is it hasn't made me sour on Comic-Con at all. It has made me really sour on Hasbro. Like I've spent so much less on Hasbro at Target and anywhere else, or like I canceled every pre-order when it's like, if you're not going to come to Comic-Con and do the normal thing, I don't want to support you with pre-orders. And so that was like for me, but everybody obviously responds to these things differently, and so it'll be interesting to see if the strikes do roll into it, how they hit. All right, I have one last thing. So if we have any other, or was there anything else I missed before we get to our last thing?
Well, Carrie added that nothing means DC won't be there. Honestly, if SAG strikes, we can still have studio panels. It just may be a lot of pre-recorded footage. Right. I also think we'll have a lot of unofficial panels for shows. So there's always lots of fan-run panels and stuff on lots of different things. So yeah, we'll see what actually happens.
Okay. All right. So with that said, as we come to the end of the show here, we did want to say things that you could check out now if you're wanting like a little bit more San Diego Comic-Con talk things. Obviously, we have a lot of stuff from 2022. So especially if you're somebody new and you want to see, well, what is it just like hitting the floor on preview night? I mean, we have lots of videos like those in our archives, so you can find all those on the YouTube channel. Thousands of hours literally of San Diego Comic-Con stuff. I mean, during the pandemic, like I never watch our own videos, but during the pandemic, I watched a lot of our San Diego videos just to kind of get that fix. That said, though, there is already a video up for this year as well. A couple months ago, we went to Prince Street Pizza and did like a food review. If you've not been to Prince Street Pizza, it's New York based. It is pretty incredible. Our friend Jamie had told us like, hey, it's coming to San Diego. This will need to be a Comic-Con thing. And as soon as he said that, like I feel like within a week or two, we made our way down here. And so that is on our 2023 playlist. So if you want to check that out, we're going to include a tiny little bit about it in our Quick Eats guide that we're putting together, the video. So we'll have a little bit on there. But if you want to see the full, like, let's try the pizza and all that, you can check that on the YouTube channel now. And then, as I said, we'll have that Quick Eats video up hopefully sooner than later, and then next week we'll be back down here with another one of these shows, as well as probably a live tour of Seaport Village or Fifth or something like that. But we'll start doing kind of the neighborhoods of San Diego Comic-Con very soon here. So
Yep. Thank you for joining us.
thank you so much. Have a great, what is it, Wednesday? Great rest of the Wednesday, and we'll see you in line somewhere.
Bye.